Necromancy is a branch of magic focused on controlling the energies associated with death, unlife, and the life force. This type of magic can enhance a person's life force, drain it from another creature, create undead beings, and even resurrect the dead. It does not have sub-schools, but includes moral distinctions: white, black, and gray. Necromancers are often seen as ominous or malevolent by the general populations in the Forgotten Realms, because their work involves death. However, not all necromancers are morally corrupt, though many cultures disapprove of their death-related practices. The negative energy plane, also known as the plane of death or the negative material plane, is an inner energy plane within the cosmology of the multiverse. After the spell plague, this plane collapsed into the elemental chaos, merging with other inner planes. The goddess Shar channeled some of this death energy into the plane of shadow, creating the Shadowfell. Cosmologists believe that negative energy, along with its counterpart positive energy and the four elements, forms the known universe. This plane is extremely hostile to all life and energy, allowing only the undead to travel safely and harness its death energy to attack the living with devastating effect. The negative energy plane can be accessed via the ethereal plane or an adjacent elemental plane, but not through an elemental vortex. There is speculation that the Void card in the Deck of Many Things can also bring a person there. Traveling through the deep ethereal, a pure black curtain of vaporous color marks the boundary of the Plane of Death's border ethereal region. This boundary is weak and can fluctuate randomly, causing travelers to suddenly find themselves in the Plane of Death. The plane itself is an airless, featureless void of darkness where gravity is a personal choice. Despite this, the plane can also contain structures on a sort of landscape, possibly made of solid darkness or elemental earth, in regions known as doldrums that lack the major negative dominance trait. The atmosphere is not a vacuum, but cannot be used by winged creatures for propulsion, nor can it sustain life. Torches and lanterns burn briefly before being extinguished, though magical lit sources function normally with very limited visibility. These traits have led cosmologists to theorize that the plane's nature is to greedily devour life-giving energies rather than simply lacking them, though this distinction is purely academic. In practical terms, without protection from the negative energy and the elimination of the need to breathe, survival on this plane is limited to a few minutes at best. In some areas of the plane, the negative energy recedes to create doldrums, while other locations have intense concentrations that form stable chunks of solid matter called voidstone. These pitch-black masses vary wildly in size, but generally have the diameter of a small house. Contact with voidstone results in destruction within moments, affecting even the undead. Scholars speculate that the stone might be a component in creating magical items like the Sphere of Annihilation. Additionally, voidstones of a certain size exhibit a deadly property. They are attracted to life and move towards the nearest living creature in jerky and uneven leaps. The exact range of this attraction is unknown due to the limited visibility in the plane, and attempts to mentally control voidstone have consistently failed. Powerful undead beings use the plane as their home base. Where undead are found, necromancers are often nearby. The doldrums are particularly well suited for necromantic activities, although there is always a risk that a surge of negative energy could overwhelm the area. Undead are creatures that have died and been reanimated by spiritual or magical forces. Some deities use the undead as divine servants. For instance, the dwarven god Dumathoin deploys undead dwarves as divine messengers. The undead are highly resistant to numerous effects and substances that are extremely harmful to the living. They are immune to things that affect the mind: poison, sleep, paralysis, stunning, disease, death-related magic. Their life force cannot be drained in any manner. There are 6 primary ways a living creature can become undead. A living creature may willingly undergo the transformation to undeath. While most who do this tend to have a disposition towards evil, it is not always the case. Common motivations include fear of dying from old age, fear of dying from a severe wound, and a desire for power. An intelligent being might create undead servants to serve their own purposes. These mindless minions are typically created by malevolent spellcasters to act as guards or carry out their commands. Sometimes, committing an evil and heinous act transforms a living creature into an undead one. The required act's intensity and specificity are somewhat random and not entirely uncommon. An intelligent creature that dies or is killed with an important deed left incomplete may become undead. The specifics of undeath achieved in this manner are often left to chance. Malign forces can create undead beings seemingly at random. This can happen to any creature, in any location, and at any time. In Cormyr, it is believed that wandering evil spirits take over corpses to slay and frighten the living. Many types of undead creatures can pass on their undeath to others while inflicting mortal wounds. Skeletons are undead animated corpses, completely devoid of flesh. They can be made from nearly any solid creature, resulting in a wide range of sizes and power. Besides the basic humanoid skeleton, there are also skeletons made from wolves, trolls, hedons, and even giants. Necromantic energy holds skeletons together, giving the otherwise loose bones and joints a semblance of vitality and basic intellectual abilities. They are immune to mind-affecting spells and cannot be rendered unconscious or become fatigued. Edged and piercing weapons, like swords and arrows, are largely ineffective against them. Only blunt weapons, like warhammers, can effectively knock their bones apart. Like other undead, skeletons can be repelled or destroyed outright by priests such as paladins and clerics. The necromantic spell Animate Dead allows spellcasters to create skeletons. They can also spontaneously arise in areas saturated with evil or necromantic energies. While a normal animated skeleton is well within the purview of even an amateur necromancer, more specialized and powerful forms exist. Animal skeletons are typically created using the Animate Dead spell to act as minor guardians. Additionally, between 1 and 12 animal skeletons can be summoned by Undead Summoning 1 spells. Around 1370, several whale skeletons wandered near Thordentor, protecting an undersea lair owned by the Twisted Rune. In the city of Raven's Bluff, a toy store named Toysmith's uses a skeletal war dog as a guard animal. Instead of displaying its bones, the store owners keep the skeleton inside a plush dog. Revived fossils are the remains of animals, or occasionally people, preserved in a petrified state and then animated. These creatures are made of petrified bones, and when animated, remain partially encased in stone. While mostly similar to simple skeletons, revived fossils possess stony bones that resist all but the strongest blows from weapons not made of adamantine. They require special rituals for animation, and like most skeletons, can only follow their master's commands, which cannot be too complex. The Underdungeon beneath Stardeep is unexplored, but some passages contain fossilized remains animated by the Relic Lich, who can also turn living creatures into fossils. The keeper of the Cerulean Sign, Talarian, was once attacked by a swarm of revived fossils as he was still an Empyrean knight when exploring the Underdungeon. Bonebats are skeletal undead formed from the bodies of giant bats or multiple bat skeletons. Some sages view them as a type of deep bat. They take pleasure in killing but never attack each other. If left without commands for a long time, they attempt to leave their master's lair to hunt, typically until they have killed at least 2 creatures, often of similar size or smaller. Among all creatures, they prefer to kill living bats. They remain eternally bound to their creators, even if their creators have been slain, and cannot be controlled by anyone else. They are unable to activate magical items, however their creators often attach amulets or other protective devices to enhance them. The spells used in their creation grant Bonebats infravision and the ability to see invisible creatures. They are also immune to forms of paralysis. They always approach their enemies silently and attack with a bite that can temporarily paralyze their victims. As undead servants, they will obediently fight to the death if commanded by their masters. Bonebats with additional bones grafted onto them for combat purposes are known as battle bats. These typically include claws, talons, stingers, and spurs, often laced with poison. Their appearance is largely indistinguishable from standard bonebats. They can be found in various locations across both Faerun and the Underdark. As of the late 14th century, they are particularly common in the Starwoods. Typically, they are encountered within the lairs of their masters. Given the nature of the creatures and the individuals who create them, they are most often found in caverns, evil temples, ruins, and tombs. They are usually created to serve as guardians, messengers, and battle allies. They are most commonly created by the Red Wizards of Thay, members of the Arcane Brotherhood, worshippers of Kiaran Sali, and powerful undead such as liches, archliches, and vampires. To create a bonebat, one must first cast the spell Ilatho's 9 Men on the acquired skeletons, forming an invisible membrane of force across the bones that links them and allows for flight. The creator then needs to cast the spells Fly, Detect Invisibility, Infravision, and Animate Dead. Additional spells might be necessary to properly train the newly created Bonebat. Skeleton warriors are undead lords, once powerful fighters cursed with unlife by magic users who have trapped their souls in golden circlets. The warriors often look like yellowed, age-cracked skeletons with chunks of decaying flesh still attached, resembling liches. Their eye sockets are deep and black, each with a sinister pinpoint of reddish light. They wear the rusted and rotten remnants of the clothes and armor they wore in life. Anyone wearing the golden circlet containing the skeleton warrior's soul can control the monster. This allows the controller to see through its eyes and issue commands, although the controller's own body will remain immobile and unable to take any other actions. The circlet wearer can also render the skeleton warrior inert at will. The skeleton warrior will quickly and relentlessly attack the owner of the circlet if it is lost, stolen, or given away. If the creature ever recovers its own soul circlet, both it and the circlet turn to worthless dust. If they had psionic abilities in life, they retain them as undead. They are often found near their places of death or burial sites. They usually have collections of treasure, trinkets, and remnants from their lifetimes of adventures. However, they do not guard these treasures, as their only concern is recovering their soul circlets. They are often created to serve as bodyguards, servants, or workers. Some become too obsessed with recovering their circlets, making them uncontrollable, undependable, and dangerous. They rarely associate with other types of undead, and prefer solitude. They often wield two-handed swords in combat, but can use any weapon they were skilled with in life. They can only be damaged by magical weapons, cannot be turned by priests, and have exceptionally strong resistance to magic. Their mere appearance instills fear in their foes. The 10th century mage Borusta used several skeleton warriors equipped with the Mail of the Dead as his assassins. In some cases, divine magic curses can create skeleton warriors. In 1369, a group of adventurers encountered a skeleton warrior sustained by a curse placed on the accursed tower of Icewind Dale. With his dying breath, Yarmouth the Brown, a priest of Merkel, cursed the tower, turning everyone who died within it into horrific undead monsters. As of 1372, skeleton warriors guarded the newly discovered Tel Arthir's tomb, the emperor of the 9th dynasty of lords from a long-forgotten ancient kingdom. These skeleton warriors were under the control of Tel Arthir, who was preserved as a warrior mummy. A Skull Lord is a powerful undead entity that commands various types of lesser undead. They have a skeletal humanoid appearance with 2 extra skulls, one on each side of the central one, which is adorned with a crown. They wield a potent staff made of bone, featuring small skulls on both ends. As undead beings, they do not need to breathe or sleep and do not require food or drink. They are highly perceptive and possess dark vision. They often spend their time seeking dark, ritualistic knowledge and claiming territories within the shadowy passages of the Shadowfell. Only the most skilled necromancers can control a Skull Lord. These regal beings can summon and lead multiple undead, commanding them in battle. They are formidable spellcasters, wielding a variety of spells from different schools of magic. Their most potent spell is Finger of Death, but they also have access to powerful frost spells like Cone of Cold and Ice Storm. In melee combat, they skillfully use their Bone Staff, which releases necrotic energy upon impact along with inflicting blunt damage. They are adept at evading attacks and resisting certain effects. Skull Lords possess a wide range of immunities and resistances. They are immune to being charmed, stunned, poisoned, and blinded. They are resistant to cold and necrotic damage, as well as non-magical weaponry. Each skull of a Skull Lord is attuned to a specific power, the ability to summon undead, spit bone shards, and tear a bone from an opponent to heal an undead ally. Losing a skull means losing the corresponding power. Once a month, Skull Lords can summon a spectral rider from the remnants of a fallen rider and their mount. In the 14th century, it was initially believed that these entities were created by the death of a powerful necromancer, Vrakmul. These Skull Lords sought to resurrect Vrakmul and used their abilities to command lesser undead. By the 15th century, it was thought that Skull Lords were actually brought into existence by the Oithian lich deity Vecna. After his plans to conquer Oith were thwarted, Vecna bound his generals and groups of 3 and transformed them into undead monstrosities. The first of these triple-fused officers were exiled to the Shadowfell, with others following later. Since then, many Skull Lords and their undead armies have claimed various parts of the Plane of Shadow. In the latter half of the 15th century, Ephron Allegni guided Drizzt Do'Urden and his companions to the Shadowfell. During their journey, they confronted a formidable Skull Lord and its undead army of ghouls, ghasts, and other creatures. The group successfully repelled the horde and defeated the Skull Lord. Ephron Allegni recovered its powerful staff and crown. Blazing skeletons, also called blazing bones, are a type of skeleton usually animated from the spirits of those who died in flames. Some of them can result from a contingency spell malfunctioning after the individual perishes in a fire. These skeletons are engulfed in flames, particularly around their shoulders, skull, and hands. Their bones are typically charred, and their eyes glow like the ends of hot pokers. They possess clawed hands. Constantly tormented by their flames, they harbor a deep hatred for life and happiness. They seek to burn anything they encounter and destroy the living to temporarily lessen their pain. They cannot be directly controlled by their creators, but they can be compelled not to attack them and to stay within a specific area or structure. They are known for taunting and threatening their adversaries with a roar of crackling words. Blazing skeletons are immune to fire-based spells and abilities, with some even being enhanced by flames. They are also resistant to charm, hold, and sleep spells. They can be harmed by water, especially holy water, though alcoholic liquids have no effect on them. They can hurl head-sized balls of flame. They cleanse disease-causing germs, and are particularly harmful to cold undead, such as ghouls, liches, vampires, and wights. They prefer to fight their enemies from a distance by hurling balls of flame, but they will use their clawed hands if necessary. They can occasionally be found in Avernus. Typically, they avoid associating with other undead, even others of their own kind. In some cases, evil archmages or high priests deliberately create blazing skeletons to act as guardians. One archmage used them as walking garbage furnaces. The clawed hand of a blazing skeleton can be used as a form of undead graft. This grants the recipient a slight resistance to fire, a fiery fist, and the ability to throw small orbs of flame. As of 1367, these skeletons could be found guarding the armory of the citadel of the Riders. Following the spell plague, blazing skeletons appeared in Gauntlgrim and beneath the ruins of Cragmire Keep, inside the Cragmire family's crypts. They also emerged within the Shadowfell's reflection of Mount Hottenau and its prime material counterpart, which erupted in 1451. Additionally, they were deployed in the mines of Tethymir by the Banite Reslas and his Centauran forces. A Hecuva is a formidable type of undead. These creatures are the cursed spirits of clerics, druids, monks, or paladins who abandoned their vows or committed heresies. Hecuva resemble skeletons, with their main distinguishing feature being their tattered robes, which they often wear, remnants of their former priestly or druidic lives. They are twisted versions of their past selves, spreading disease instead of healing and aiming to kill all living beings. They retain only faint memories of their previous existence. They do not use weapons in combat, opting to attack with their sharp and powerful finger bones. They possess enough strength to rip chunks of wood with a single swipe. When they strike a target, the victim is infected with a deadly disease called Hecuva Blight, which is fatal unless cured by a cure disease or a remove disease spell. Driven by their intense hatred for good-aligned clerics, Hecuva will ignore all other targets until the cleric is slain. They are immune to mind-affecting spells and most effects that influence the living. They can polymorph up to 3 times daily, using this ability to avoid detection or set up ambushes. Infravision can reveal a polymorphed Hecuva's true form. They are adept at casting divine spells, especially those of death and evil domains. Like most other lesser undead, they do not eat or drink, and lack the ability to speak, reduced to howling and wailing. They do not use weapons in combat, opting to attack with their sharp and powerful finger bones. If their opponents prove too resistant for physical attack, they will utilize their dark divine magics to subdue their opponents or cover their retreat. Dreads are undead entities that appear as skeletal arms from small to medium-sized humanoids. There's also a variant known as a vampiric dread, which regains some health from the damage that it inflicts. These arms resemble those of a typical skeleton. moving through the air as if still connected to the shoulders of an invisible body. Lacking intelligence, dreads only perform tasks as they are commanded to do so. They have the ability to fly, see in the dark, and can observe physical behavior, traits, and possessions if instructed. They can also listen for passwords or command words and are typically used as guardians. The creature's name comes from its ability to instill fear in ordinary people and novice adventurers, though sufficient wisdom can overcome this fear. They can use a claw attack or can wield melee weapons appropriate for their size. They are tireless, relentlessly pursuing their targets. Being undead, they are immune to fatigue, exhaustion, ability drain, energy drain, sleep, charm, and other mind-affecting effects, stun, paralysis, disease, and death magic, as well as raise dead. Interestingly, resurrection can be performed on a dread that isn't attacking or instructed to prevent it. Vampiric dreads have the ability to swim in and in some cases follow a target through a portal. When they successfully strike an opponent, they gain temporary health exceeding their normal amount. This extra health helps them absorb damage during combat and diminishes slowly over a period of several 10 days. All dreads are created similarly to other typical undead using the animate dead spell. However, creating a dread also requires a Zendalur gemstone worth around 1,000 gold pieces. The central hub of the Lost Princess Road portal network, located on Scarn Rock near the Sword Coast, is guarded by vampiric dreads. Using an incorrect activation word causes up to 6 of these creatures to emerge from the stone and attack. Flameskulls are fiery undead guardians crafted from the skulls of deceased spellcasters. More powerful versions are called Great Flameskulls. A flameskull is formed from the head of a humanoid, usually a human spellcaster, shortly after death. They are typically made by malevolent spellcasters, such as clerics or wizards, using a Create Undead spell, although the exact rituals are ancient and often forgotten. The creators can decide if the flameskull retains its spellcasting abilities. 9 early priests of Mystra once transformed themselves into flameskulls in an attempt to achieve immortality, resulting in the Circle of Skulls of Waterdeep. They are disembodied floating skulls, including the jawbone, enveloped in eerie green flames. Their light can illuminate an area like a torch, though they can reduce their glow to a faint flicker. Some have bones inscribed with strange runes, and their eye sockets typically contain glowing emerald lights filled with malice. As they fly, small jets of flame follow them, and they move in total silence, only making noise when they speak, cast spells, or scream for intimidation or effect. They occasionally emit insane, echoing laughter and speak in hollow, echoing voices. If permitted by their creator, flameskulls can cast spells from their mouths. Initially, they were limited to spells only with verbal components and couldn't cast mind control spells. Most flameskulls know up to 3 spells, typically Magic Missile, Flame Strike, and an ancient incantation called Spell Reflection. After the Year of Wild Magic in 1372, they were reported to have a broader range of spells: Detect Magic, Mage Hand, Ray of Frost, Blur, Magic Missiles, and Ray of Exhaustion around 3 times per day, as well as Fireball and Mirror Image once per day. By 1479, post-spell-plagued flameskulls are known to be capable only of Mage Hand at will and Fireball, with Great Flameskulls able to produce a much more powerful Firestorm. After the Second Sundering, flameskulls retain the full command of the spells they knew when alive, ignoring the material and somatic components they could no longer perform. As wizards, they typically know Mage Hand at will, Blur, Flaming Spear, Magic Missile, and Shield according to preparation, and Fireball once per day. Initially, a flameskull could also vomit fire from its mouth or eyes. If forced to attack in melee, their bite can burn their victims. They possess all the same immunities as other undead and are also unaffected by cold, fire, heat, and electrical magic and attacks. They have a high resistance to spells, protecting them against those they can't reflect. They're also harder than expected for a cleric to turn. Although they can be struck by any kind of weapon, only blunt weapons cause significant damage to flameskulls. Additionally, they steadily regenerate all damage and can even reassemble themselves within a few hours to a few days after being completely shattered. They can fly swiftly with good maneuverability. They are vigilant and alert, reacting quickly to threats. Skilled in hiding and moving quietly, they're quite stealthy. When engaging intruders, flameskulls will speak aloud to lure them into traps or deceive them about other dangers in the area. Those with Mage Hand will use it to open and close doors, trigger and reset traps, and manipulate objects to suit their tactics. They avoid melee and missile attacks, preferring to fly to high places and safely hurl fire and other spells at trespassers. Confident in their ability to reform, they have no fear of destruction and will attack without hesitation if necessary. They guard whatever their creator instructs them to protect, such as a hidden treasure hoard, a secret room, or even a certain individual. They follow the instructions given at their creation precisely, so the directives have to be carefully worded to ensure proper execution. They can maintain their watch for years, or even centuries after their creators have passed away, often being found in ancient and long-forgotten places. They retain vague memories of their former lives and can recall significant events in detail, speaking in their old voices. However, they're merely echoes of their former selves. Maintaining their intelligence, but suffering from extreme boredom and loneliness due to their prolonged watches, Flameskulls typically go insane and exhibit strange behaviors. They constantly seek entertainment from their surroundings and crave companionship. Their sole purpose in death is to guard what they are created to protect. If the object or person they guard is destroyed or taken despite their efforts, or if they can no longer fulfill their duty, they are released from their guardianship and become independent. Instead of attacking the responsible party or seeking destruction to escape undeath, they will show a form of gratitude and follow the person responsible, floating just out of reach, making witty remarks. They will accompany them everywhere, ensuring that no quiet study, secret meeting, private matter, or romantic moment is safe from their new, ever-present Flameskull companion. Typically, they act as solitary guardians. However, they can sometimes be found in groups of up to 12. Otherwise, they are found in the company of those capable of creating or commanding undead. They can speak common and any languages they knew in life, such as Draconic, Infernal, and ancient languages like Loros and Thoros. One Star Elf Flameskull is known to have only spoken Elven. They can know up to 15 languages, but typically know about 2. Whenever possible, wizards, priests, and alchemists study Flameskulls to learn how to create them or replicate their powers, or to identify the unique properties of their flames, although no known successes have been recorded. Due to their great age, they often possess old, obscure lore and historical secrets. To prevent the destroyed Flameskull from reforming, the broken fragments must be splashed with holy water, ensuring that a majority of the bone fragments are doused. Alternatively, they can be targeted with a Dispel Evil, Dispel Magic, Exorcise, or Remove Curse spell. In the tunnels below Miratma and Tethir, the mummy sorceress Kalak built an army of undead, which included Flameskulls by the mid-14th century. In Waterdeep's Faraz Alley, the Circle of Skulls regularly appeared, flying in a circle and arguing with each other. Unpredictable in nature, they sometimes aid by providing information, but attack those who annoy them. The Mad Mage Hollister created several Flameskulls to guard the Runestone in the Runestone level of Undermountain. By the mid-1370s, pairs of them patrol the area. Barnabas, a former wizard in the mortal world, now lives a second life as a Flameskull after his death. He resides on the plane of Avernus in the Nine Hells, under the rule of the night hag Mad Maggie. In Undeath, Barnabas is as self-important as he was powerful in life. Although forgetful, he periodically does have great insights and recalls profound arcane knowledge from his previous existence. After his mortal death, Barnabas' skull was stolen from his tomb by a rival and transformed into a Flameskull. This rival later made an infernal pact with Mad Maggie, offering Barnabas as part of the deal. He was then incorporated into the Knucklebones Gang, a diverse group that included other fiends, Kenkus, imps, and redcaps. He endured torment from the gang's redcaps, but was too humiliated to complain. Around the year of 12 Warnings, 1494, Barnabas lost a tooth when one of the Fae threw a metal gear at his jaw, causing him to whistle whenever he speaks. Brainburn was a Flameskull member of the Twisted Rune in Undermountain in 1375. His master sent him and his legion, composed of Baneguard and Dread, to investigate a message that the dying Hallister Blackcloak had sent to adventurers. Brainburn's strategy involved capturing all the adventurers and using a Detect Thoughts spell on them. Durlard Kolat was a powerful mage who lived in Waterdeep. In the year of the Shield, 1367, Durlard was a middle-aged but vital man with russet-colored eyes, braided long blonde hair, and a similarly braided beard. He was often seen wearing a bright red vest over brown robes. He was a highly focused individual, always concentrating on one task at a time, regardless of his surroundings, whether engaged in spell research or simply eating. This single-mindedness made him seem standoffish to most people and hindered his ability to make friends easily. An incredibly talented transmuter with a flair for the dramatic, Dulark often used impressive spell theatrics when casting magic. He possessed numerous magical items, many likely crafted by his brother, including a Staff of Power. He spent considerable time wandering around Waterdeep, especially when beginning new magical research. He sought renown and often achieved it by creating and selling new transmutation spells. He remained close to his brother Alcidor, though they had drifted apart from their adventuring days. They frequently argued about the nature of ancient artifacts, mostly netherese, and lived in separate towers on the same property. Dulark and Alcidor were born as twins to a pair of merchants in Sulmeth. However, Alcidor appeared much older due to the physical toll of creating magical items. Both brothers were trained at Lorbath's Mystics Academy before joining an adventuring party called Mystra's Defenders. Years later, while in the Border Kingdoms, the Defenders were transported to the maze level of Undermountain, but managed to escape and continue their adventures in the Savage Frontier. In 1358, they re-entered Waterdeep to find it under attack by the undead forces of Mirkul, and they immediately joined the city's defenses. After the conflict, the Coldlight settled down, pooling their riches to purchase property in the Adventurers' Quarter of the South Ward. They took over an old stone manor, repaired it, and renamed it Coldlight Towers. Dulark sold several original spells to the Watchful Order of Magus and Protectors, but grew upset and considered discontinuing the business when they began omitting his name from the spells. In 1367, Dulark created a new spell called Dulark's Animurge, which could combine two creatures into a new species with traits of both. He was still testing it, and gifted the first creature created with it, a Wolveraven, to Helban. However, in midsummer of the same year, Coldlight Towers was broken into, and several spell scrolls and magic items were stolen. After the break-in, Dulark became increasingly paranoid and encased Coldlight Towers in an invisible force field to prevent further intrusions. Over time, he began to suspect his brother of selling their secrets, further straining their relationship. Eventually, Alcidor left Waterdeep and has not been heard from since. Dulark ultimately died alone in the towers. Near the end of the 15th century, the evil wizard Monsoon took possession of the towers and turned Dulark's remains into a Flameskull. He now guards his former abode. A zombie is an undead being typically brought back to life through the reanimation of a corpse. Unlike animated skeletons, zombies retain some flesh and emit a foul odor. They are almost mindless, but can follow simple commands, such as, kill anyone who opens the treasure chest. Almost any solid creature can be transformed into a zombie. Besides humanoids, this includes troglodytes, minotaurs, ogres, and even beholders. Essentially, a zombie is a reanimated corpse, brought to life by someone capable of manipulating negative energy, like a cleric. For instance, a cleric can use negative energy on a corpse to make it move its body, arms, and legs. Zombies can also spontaneously arise in areas saturated with necromantic magic. They drag their feet as they shamble along, which prevents them from leaving clear footprints. Necromancers often use demon's blood as a potent magical adhesive on zombies' joints to slow down the rotting and disintegration of their tissues. While hordes of basic zombies are relatively simple to raise, more specialized and powerful zombie types exist. Gravehounds are the animated corpses of medium-sized dogs and hounds, relentless zombie canines, sometimes raised by Thayan necromancers. Gravehounds appear as decomposing dogs or wolves, with fur falling off in patches, revealing decaying muscles, bones, and sinew. Their teeth, often broken, remain deadly, and a red spark of dark magic flickers in their lifeless eyes. Gravehounds lack intelligence, but are dangerous due to their lightning speed, relentless attacks, and large numbers. Their main weapon is their bite, which deals necrotic damage to their targets. The necrosis from their bite continues to rot the target's flesh until healed. These undead dogs can easily knock a medium or small humanoid prone with their bite. The necromantic drive in these creatures is so strong that even when destroyed, Gravehounds manage to land one final bite on their slayer. Like other zombies, they are undead creatures that exist solely to serve their masters and kill and then consume the living. In certain places where the boundary between the prime material and the Shadowfell is thin, the corruption of the Plane of Shadows can bring zombies and Gravehounds into existence. These so-called wild zombies lack masters and attack anything alive on sight. Beyond Toril and its Shadowfell echo, Gravehounds can also be found on the world of Neroth, deep within its version of the Underdark, near Myconid colonies. Around 1479, Gravehounds stalked the lands around Spellguard, accompanied by other zombies and wights. During the Siege of Neverwinter in 1479, Gravehounds plagued the lands surrounding the stronghold northeast of Neverwinter Wood, which was taken over by the heroes of Sleeping Dragon Bridge. They were also part of Valindra Shadowmantle's undead army and are often raised by Zos Tom's Red Wizards. In 1480, Garrod Holmaster, a sword mage from the Moon Sea, along with his companions, faced numerous Gravehounds while traversing Shadow Hulberg in the Shadowfell. Coldlight walkers are a type of undead found in cold regions. As undead humanoid corpses, a Coldlight walker's appearance varies, but it is often seen in the clothes that it wore at death. Its most notable feature is the incredibly bright light emitted from within its body. The light is so bright it can temporarily blind a creature and illuminates a large area around it. They can also replicate the effects of a cold ray spell. They harbor a hatred for all life. If a creature is killed by them, its corpse becomes frozen solid for over a week and cannot be thawed by heat or resurrected. They are the reanimated corpses of humanoids who died from exposure to the cold. Certain gods sometimes create them to remind the living of the power and wrath of winter. Chillborn zombies are animated by dark rituals that infuse their minds and bodies with the iciness of death. They are relentless, brutal, and predatory. They disregard their own safety and follow the will of their creator, attacking their targets in direct assaults, usually focusing on their weaker victims first. They are typically disorganized and lacking in intelligence, although they are capable of using ladders. They drain the heat from a creature's body, leaving it cold and dead. They emit an aura of intense cold, with temperatures dropping even further when multiple Chillborn are close together. The icy touch can freeze a warm-blooded creature in place, making it more vulnerable to the zombie's freezing attacks. When slain, a Chillborn zombie's body explodes in an area of freezing cold, numbing any creature nearby. Hungry Chillborn zombies aim to drain the heat and life from warm-blooded victims. They can be found on Great Glacier, but they aren't limited to only icy regions. They've also appeared in Aglarond, along the shores of the Sea of Fallen Stars, in Neverwinter Wood, the ruins of Illafarn, and the tombs and hidden places along the Sword Coast. In the 15th century, an unusually intelligent and coordinated group of Chillborn zombies posed a significant threat to Vasa after being released from the lost city of Valathrim, when the melting of the Great Glacier uncovered the ruins. This period saw attacks by a mysterious, heat-stealing monster in nearby Damara, known as the Breath of Winter. In the year of the Ageless One, 1479, a necromancer named Azu Morn plotted against the masked lords of Waterdeep. His initial move was to raise various undead in the crypt of Solemn Order and recognize Furriers and Woolman Guild, which included animating the bodies of 4 former guildmasters as Chillborn zombies. An Ash Zombie is a unique type of undead created by powerful energies released following the eruption of Mount Hotenau in 1451. People also refer to them as Scrabblers and Dustwalkers. They generate unnatural ashes from their bodies and use them as a weapon. When attacked, a puff of ash might erupt from their body. When the Red Wizards of Thay discovered them around 1463, they began researching ways to create Ash Zombies artificially. By around 1479, they are known to be common in the abandoned parts of Neverwinter and in Thundertree. A Juju Zombie is an exceptionally powerful kind of zombie. A typical one looks just like an ordinary zombie, with gray, leathery, and hard flesh. The creature's eyes reveal its desire to destroy all living things. Created by potent magic, they are stronger, faster, and more cunning than basic shambling corpses. Unlike normal zombies, they retain their consciousness, and their awareness of their undead state makes them exceptionally vicious and cruel. They can use tools, throwing weapons, as well as bows and crossbows. Jujus partially exist on the negative material plane, making them only vulnerable to magical weapons. They are also immune to mind-affecting spells, illusions, poison, electricity, magic missiles, death, and cold spells. They have resistance to fire. They can understand language and follow commands, preferring simple tactics and strategies in combat. They are dexterous enough to easily scale and climb walls. One way to create a Juju Zombie involves a Create Undead spell cast by a powerful spellcaster or the touch of the Blightspawn. Another method is using the Energy Drain spell to completely siphon all life from a human or medium-sized humanoid. Beyond the prime material plane, this type of undead can be found in the domains of dread. Due to their cruel and vicious nature, they are popular among the Red Wizards and can be found in greater numbers in Thay. Sea zombies, also known as drowned ones, are a type of zombie that arise from the corpses of humans who drowned at sea. Slaves chained to a sinking ship often reanimate as sea zombies. As the corpses of drowned humans, they typically appear bloated with discolored flesh, dripping with foul water. Their eye sockets are empty and they have blackened lips, and their tongues frequently protrude. Often their bodies are encrusted with barnacles and certain aquatic life such as starfish. Those who were assassins in life often wear simple, makeshift masks of driftwood. A rare form of drowned one, known as a drowned master, has shadowy tentacles in place of legs. They are always connected to a powerful source of magic and often act as leaders of other drowned ones. Unlike standard land-dwelling zombies, sea zombies possess free will and can be quite cunning. They typically harbor a deep hatred for the living, which is one of their primary motivations. Due to their waterlogged bodies, some claim that it is difficult to harm sea zombies with fire or fire-based magic. However, they are quite vulnerable to lightning, electricity, and severe cold temperatures. On land, they move in a very slow, clumsy, and shambling manner, but in water, they are very fast swimmers. In the years following the spell plague, it was often said that drowned ones, except for drowned masters, could not swim and would always sink to the bottom of any body of water, though they moved unimpeded by the water. Their appearance and the stench of decay from their bodies often causes living creatures around them to feel nauseated. The putrid water that drips from their bodies contains many pathogenic bacteria, which carry a small chance of causing severe disease in their victims, most often in the form of blue rot. When a priest reanimates as a sea zombie, they often receive spells from evil deities. Drowned masters in particular possess several unique abilities. An aura of intense cold radiates from their bodies. Their tentacles drain positive energy from other creatures and impart negative energy. They can also expel ink in a cone imbued with damaging negative energy. Both their tentacles and ink can potentially infect their foes with blue rot. Many sea zombies, reanimated from the corpses of sailors, typically wield weapons common to that profession, such as belaying pins, clubs, daggers, hooks, and short swords. Those who are rogues or assassins in life often use daggers and crossbows, stealthily skulking around, while those who are martial artists in life use their bare fists. Whatever weapon a drowned one yields, it is always coated in blue rot. They are often known to launch attacks on anchored ships, climbing aboard and forcing the occupants overboard where they could be dealt with more easily. They frequently congregate in loose packs. Although they have no need to eat flesh, they often do to instill terror in others. They are almost always found in bodies of water, most often in shallow areas, and they typically don't stray very far from the water. Drowned masters never travel far from the powerful source of magic to which they are tethered. In the Sea of Fallen Stars, sea zombies can be found in the shipwrecked plains, the haunted plains, and the ruins of Oelidru. In the Alamber Sea, many are found in the shipwrecks near the Aleor Islands. Beneath the Sea of Swords, they are located around the temple Legacy of Deep Death. On the Faerunian mainland, they inhabit the Rat Hills Dump near Waterdeep. Drowned ones understand the languages they knew in life, but are incapable of speaking them. When they do attempt to speak, such as when a sea zombie priest recites the verbal components of a spell, it comes out as unintelligible whispers. In the early 14th century, a necromancer named Delthrin Everett raised a legion of sea zombies and other aquatic undead to defend Marsember against a pirate raid. In the year of the Shield, 1367, the Rat Hills conflagration drove many sea zombies out of the Rat Hills and into Waterdeep. In the month of Marpenoth in 1369, Lechobas lured the entire population of the Wamite Isles into the ocean with kelpies, drowning and reanimating them into an army of sea zombies. These, along with many other aquatic undead creatures, later fought in the 12th Saros War of 1369. Also in 1369, during the event known as Hollister's High Harvest Tide, 136 sea zombies rose from the sea bordering Waterdeep and walked across the sea's edge beach. The then Blackstaff of Waterdeep fought them off with a walking statue and multiple uses of the Wall of Fire spell, eventually vanquishing them all within an hour. In the midwinter of the year of the Tankard, 1370, a force of sea zombies and pirate ghosts came ashore and attacked the city of Teflon on the eastern shore of the Sea of Fallen Stars. They were ultimately driven back due to the concerted efforts of the city's branch and the Church of Tempest. In 1371, Some of the remaining sea zombies on the Wamite Isles were summoned by the Morg Boron Klosk to attack the city of Alagon. They were repelled by Harn Brightoak and the members of the Emerald Enclave. Rumors circulate that sea zombies are animated by the will of various evil deities. Sword Coast folklore speaks of sunken ships with the mare of dead men swarming with sea zombies. One such ship was the Lescanite longship Seaworm, which sank on its way to the mausoleum of Ebendeth. The captain, a priest of Mirkul, drew the attention of the god when the ship sank, turning the entire crew into sea zombies. Ogre zombies are formidable undead created from the remains of ogres. These undead, like other zombies, fight using their fists, but they can also wield great clubs or morning stars. The wizard Amelior Amanitas possesses a copper flask capable of releasing 2 fiercely loyal ogre berserkers to battle for him. If these ogres are killed, they reanimate as zombies and continue to fight. Nildar Sunblight keeps an ogre zombie as a pet. The Sunblight clan of Dwergar also owns another ogre zombie, which they use to pull a dog sled during their raids in the Underdark. Casting a Summon Undead 3 spell can summon ogre zombies to serve the caster. A Tyranosaurus Zombie is a formidable undead creature created from the corpse of a deceased Tyrannosaurus. Like all zombies, they move unevenly and emit a foul odor of decay. Often their gullets are filled with other zombies. These creatures attack with a powerful bite and a devastating tail, much like their living counterparts. Additionally, they can regurgitate smaller regular zombies from their gullets, though they cannot control these zombies and cannot regurgitate while biting prey. When a Tyrannosaurus zombie is destroyed, any remaining zombies in its stomach can burst free and rampage. In the late 15th century, various forms of undead spread through Chult like a plague. Despite efforts by the Emerald Enclave, the Order of the Gauntlet, and the Flaming Fist to contain them, these undead are part of Ras Nasi's army and have become prevalent throughout the region. Beholder zombies are formidable undead created from the reanimated corpses of deceased beholders through necromantic magic. Unlike the tyrannical death tyrants, they are mindless servants with no memory of their former selves. These zombies are decayed and rotting, barely resembling their original form. They can still hover, but many of their eye rays no longer function. Like typical zombies, they are difficult to subdue and attack anything in sight without hesitation. Their creators can issue simple commands to make them more effective in combat, but without these instructions, their attacks are random. These commands need to be given in deep speech or undercommon. The only eye rays that remain functional are paralysis, disintegration, enervation, and fear, which they can use randomly, or they might attempt to bite living beings. In the late 15th century, the Xanathar's Thieves Guild used a beholder zombie for raid missions in Waterdeep. Zombie dragons are lesser undead created from dragon corpses, often linked to the cult of the dragon. They closely resemble Draco Liches, but lack the sinister glowing eyes, instead having clouded and milky eyes that show no intelligence. Their sizes, colors, and strength vary greatly depending on the dragon corpse used. Typically, these undead beasts are rotting, with flesh hanging off their bones, and they emit a foul odor of death and decay. Their once majestic hides are often eaten through by worms and other carrion feeders. Like other undead, zombified dragons are immune to mind-affecting abilities and spells, poisons, sleep, paralysis, stun, and all natural and magical diseases. They cannot be affected by life force or experience drain, nor can they be damaged by critical attacks. These dragons are known for their physical resilience. However, they are vulnerable to holy water and the use of a powerful turning ability by clerics and paladins. The protection from evil spell is ineffective against most zombie dragons, as they are often true neutral creatures. Even in their undead form, they possess extremely sharp senses, allowing them to detect hidden and invisible creatures, and to hear noise from a great distance. Zombie red dragons, like their living counterparts, are immune to both magical and mundane fire. They can control flames and use pyrotechnics 3 times a day as natural abilities, similar to biting or goring in combat. These abilities function more as instincts rather than conscious spells. Due to their lack of intelligence, true spellcasting is impossible for zombie dragons, although their creator can imbue them with spell abilities through additional magic. Other types of undead dragons retain the same immunities they had in life. For example, zombie dragon turtles are immune to mundane and magical cold, cannot be turned by clerics and paladins, and can use their scalding steam breath weapon. Unlike Draco Liches, zombie dragons cannot fly. They do not possess an aura of fear and are unable to speak. Only a few true dragons turned zombies can use their breath weapons, and even then, only at half the power they had in life. Lacking intelligence, these hulking, rotting creatures serve their masters blindly and are known for their intense hatred of the living. In combat, zombie dragons are slow and bulky, always attacking last and using their maws, claws, tails, and wings. Generally, they possess the same physical attacks and defenses they possessed in life, except for the ability to swoop from the sky. The body of a zombie dragon can be used to house a Draco Lich's essence if a phylactery is nearby. A Draco Lich can consume the remnants of its old husk to magically transform the rotting zombie carcass back into its original form. Carrion eaters are the only creatures that willingly tolerate these rotting beasts, often found nearby, feasting on chunks of decaying flesh from the undead. Frost giant adepts and clerics know the secret of raising dragon zombies, and sometimes use reanimated white dragons as guards. The cold climate helps stave off rot, prolonging the zombie's lifespan. Creating undead dragons is a demanding task that requires both monetary resources and magical skill. To raise a dragon zombie, the caster needs access to the Animate Dead spell and a mostly intact dragon corpse with all limbs still attached. A dragon zombie can be created from the corpse of any true dragon, including dragon turtles, but not from creatures like wyverns, drakes, or dragones. The only necessary component for transforming a corpse into a zombie dragon is a true dragon's body. Young and small dragons are often used, as well as larger ones following a failed attempt to raise a more powerful undead. The ritual requires preparation of the body to be animated via the recalled spirit. If the caster fails the ritual, they can try again with new components for the Animate Dead spell. The entire process takes around 1 full day and costs around 500 gold coins. Zombie dragons can also be created by vampiric dragons when a young adult or younger worm is killed by the vampiric dragon's blood drain, or when their energy drain kills a dragon of any age. The resulting dragon zombie is a mindless beast under the control of the vampiric dragon that spawned it. Sages speculate that zombie dragons and other lesser undead dragons were created by the cult of the dragon in their quest to develop the ultimate undead dragon, the Draco Lich. Many believe that the cult used a trial and error method that led to the creation of various undead dragon forms before discovering the ancient draconic text, the Book of the Dead, which ultimately led to the creation of Draco Liches. Alminster Almar suggested that other ancient texts, yet undiscovered, might detail even more powerful types of draconic undead, and the cult of the dragon is diligently searching for them. Samaster claimed to have perfected rituals for creating zombie dragons and skeleton dragons, detailing both in his Tome of the Dragon. In the early to mid-14th century, the zombie dragon turtle resided in the lake beneath Wollover's Keep in the Veilstone Peaks of Cormyr. After 1358, a young adult red dragon named Larghaseth perished after drinking a potion of Draco Lich transformation. His body was raised as a zombie dragon in the 1360s by the cult of the dragon during their attempt to re-establish operations in the Thunder Peaks. The zombie dragon was commanded by the White Carnal to attack anything that wasn't him, his skeleton dragon, or an entity displaying the symbol of either Vel-Sharun or the cult of the dragon. In 1369, a high-ranking cleric of the cult of the dragon, Shamur, raised an adult black dragon zombie to serve as a spare body. The zombie dragon was kept in the elven catacombs beneath Castle Cormanthor, near the chamber housing the Pool of Radiance that the cult was using to power their Draco Lich ally, Elendrillar. In case the ritual failed, the zombie dragon was prepared to serve as the Lich's new body. Until then, it was used as a guard for the pool. Crawling claws are the severed and reanimated hands of humanoids, utilized by dark wizards and warlocks for surveillance or as additional hands. Using their fingers as legs, crawling claws can scuttle across the ground and navigate vertical surfaces. They are always left hands and originate from small to medium-sized creatures. They often group into swarms called applauses, which lack clear front, back, or central bodies. Crawling claws possess minimal intelligence and cannot handle complex tasks independently. They retain only negative and spiteful emotions, with few memories from their previous lives. Without specific commands, they attempt to recreate the murders they committed when they were alive, as those are among their few remaining memories. Their loyalty lies solely with their original creator. As a mix of undead and construct, crawling claws have a unique immunity to undead turning magic, leading to debates about their true classification as undead creatures. Despite lacking sensory organs, they can hear and understand commands and perceive their surroundings. They are unaffected by abilities that require actual sight. Individually, they can slash and pummel their opponents, posing a significant threat to those who have fallen. They become especially dangerous when gathered in large numbers, swarming targets and overwhelming them. They can leap a considerable distance into the air using disturbing spasms for propulsion. They are remarkably durable, immune to poison and mind-affecting spells. They are crafted by necromancers and similar practitioners to perform various menial tasks. Their small size makes them easy to hide or smuggle, and their viability is ensured as long as a humanoid is present. Warlocks and wizards sometimes use them as familiars. They are among the many types of undead that serve Velsharoon, the demi-power of necromancy. Beyond the prime material plane, they can be found in the domains of dread, particularly in Hoslick's domain, where they act as guardians of his estate strongholds. They are curiosities of arcane magic, with multiple methods of creation. They can be animated as constructs through evil rituals like Create Crawling Claw, or raised by necromancers as undead, typically from the recently severed hand of a murderer. Most rituals to create crawling claws do not require the victim to have died. A method to create one using divine magic is known through a spell called the Claws of Velsharoon. Undead crawling claws are imbued with the spirit of the humanoid form from which they were created, meaning the ritual will fail if the hand's original owner is already undead or if their spirit has long since departed. If the humanoid still lives, the crawling claw can reattach itself to their arm, becoming indistinguishable from before it was removed. If the hand is removed again, the humanoid will enter a comatose state. The destruction of the hand will kill the humanoid, but not vice versa. Despite being relatively unintelligent constructs, it is rumored that crawling claws have a method of breeding. They are reported to be capable of hacking off the hands of recently deceased and somehow animating them with their curse. The first widespread instance of crawling claws reproducing by tearing off the hands of fallen humanoids was reported by adventurers in the Underdark beneath the Sword Coast and the Vilhan Reach in the mid to late 14th century. A brain in a jar is the preserved and animated brain of a creature kept alive through alchemy and necromancy. Without its body, it wields significant and unsettling psionic abilities. This creation is a set of advanced techniques used to preserve biological matter, blending both alchemy and necromancy to sustain life in an undead state. Simply taking the brain from a zombie or other undead and placing it in preservatives is insufficient, as it would lack thought and psionic abilities. The creation of a genuine brain in a jar involves a precise extraction ritual, specific spells, and alchemical preparation formulas, which are closely guarded secrets and known only to a few master necromancers. Regardless of the method, the process is both challenging and dangerous. As the brain's powers grow, it becomes likely to dominate the mind of the necromancer who created it. As the name suggests, it is a disembodied brain suspended in a glass canister filled with alchemical preservative fluids, such as embalming fluid. The brain appears shrunken and wrinkled in its undead state, and the jar becomes grimy over time. It can launch a mind thrust at will, delivering an intense psychic assault that targets a creature's mental pathways, potentially causing both intellectual and physical damage if the target lacks the willpower to resist. 3 times a day, it can use telekinesis to influence a victim's behavior and move objects and creatures. Additionally, it can mentally dominate a person once a day. It can communicate telepathically with any being capable of language within a physical range around it. As an undead entity, it can command and rebuke other undead, similar to a cleric, although it is resistant to being turned. Attempting to use any telepathic or psionic power to sense, read the thoughts of, or control the mind of a brain in a jar, or making any other form of direct mental contact results in experiencing its madness and suffering mental damage. Despite its appearance, the brain in a jar is not immobile. It can fly with good maneuverability, moving as quickly as a humanoid can walk. Being rather fragile, brains in jars are understandably reluctant to engage in battle and prefer to fly to safety. They favor controlling creatures over direct combat. However, when a fight is unavoidable, they strike at attackers with their mind thrust power. Freed from the need to manage an entire body, Brain in the Jar has developed significant mental powers. It controls the minds and bodies of others, especially the living. However, it is also tortured and insane, often becoming malevolent. After the corrupt wizard Morel Dustwalker was executed by the Star Elves of Sildur, his apprentice Kygel Stardancer retrieved his head. Morel had been experimenting with a specific method, and Kygel used it to extract his master's brain, placing it in a jar of embalming fluid. Using another of Morel's techniques, Kygel animated the brain. For defense and mobility, Morel's jar was placed in a compartment cut into the chest of a commanded Ghasts zombie. Over the course of a century as a brain in a jar, Morel evolved into a more powerful form of undead. However, Kygel and their minions remained trapped in the citadel of Tir-en-Tiral, sealed away in the Night Realm. Driven by corruption and a thirst for power, Morel now controls evil forces from his citadel of glass in this demi-plane. His goal was to conquer the Star Elves, but he was eventually defeated. He was entombed in Tir-en-Tiral, which, along with its connecting towers, was severed from Sildur to form a separate demi-plane. Following these events, the tales of the Duskwalker became the stuff of children's nightmares. Unbeknownst to the mages who isolated the Night Realm, a dormant portal connecting it to the Yorwood still exists. Around 1372, a Nilshai sorcerer named Tolg-Biri discovered and reactivated the portal to the Night Realm, intending to gather an army to launch his own attacks on Sildur. However, his intrusion into the Night Realm caught the attention of Morel and the animated corpses also interred there. These forces, along with Morel's magical experiments and the undead remnants of his army, began clashing with Tolg-Biri's troops. Seeking the opportunity provided by the new link to the material plane, Morel kidnapped people during the night when the portal was active. He also managed to steal a magical item called the Grail of Shargalar from a merchant who camped near the portal. While zombies and skeletons are generally mindless animated corpses serving their masters, some undead creatures by their very nature have more autonomy. Ghouls are undead creatures that consume the flesh of corpses. A ghoul looks like a gaunt humanoid figure with an almost hairless, mottled, decaying skin tightly stretched over its bones. It has sharp carnivorous teeth and sunken eyes that glow like hot coals. They can paralyze their victims with a claw or bite wound, although elves are immune. The paralysis lasts between 12 and 30 seconds. Like most undead, they are immune to mind-affecting spells such as sleep. The bite of a ghoul also causes a dreadful disease called ghoul fever, which diminishes the health and agility of anyone within a day. Those who die from the disease also become a ghoul at midnight. They aim to surprise and ambush unsuspecting victims, often hiding behind gravestones or in shallow graves from which they can quickly emerge. Once close, they attack with their filthy claws and fangs. They hunt alone or in groups of up to around 12 members. It's believed that a living person who consumed human flesh will rise as a ghoul after death. This theory does fit with their cannibalistic behavior, but others think those who engaged in any form of extreme debauchery and evil could also become ghouls after death. Regardless of the cause, it is known that any humanoid bitten by a ghoul, contracting ghoul fever, and dying from it will raise as a ghoul at midnight. This transformation can be prevented if the individual is blessed and resurrected by a cleric before turning. A newly risen ghoul loses all the skills and powers from its previous life. Their minds become twisted, turning them feral, yet cunning and hungry for living flesh. Despite their transformation, they are not bound to serve other ghouls. They have an insatiable hunger for carrion, consuming both the dead and the living. They hide in graveyards and on battlefields, where their foul food is abundant and the air is filled with the scent of death. By the mid-14th century, ghouls, along with many other kinds of undead, hunt within the battle bones of the western heartlands. They also inhabit the House of Stone on the edge of the Ardeep Forest. Beyond the prime material plane, they can also be found in the domains of dread. Intelligent ghouls form the ruling class in the undead city of Evernight in the Shadowfell. They retain the languages they knew in life, typically speaking Common. Some of them serve the deity Kiaran Sali. In 1369, during the resurgence of the Pool of Radiance in the ruins of Mithranor, some orcs allied with the cult of the dragon, but they were unable to fend off the undead roaming the ruins. The dwarven tombs deep beneath Mithranor became a permanent lair for some of these orcs, who were transformed into hulking and terrifying orc ghouls. Ghasts are a more powerful subtype of ghoul. They closely resemble their undead kin, though they are slightly more slender and ghost-like. The stench of death and rot surrounds them. The odor is so foul that it can cause nausea, retching, and in rare cases even paralysis. Like most undead, Ghasts are immune to mind-affecting spells, such as charm and sleep. However, they are particularly vulnerable to weapons made of cold iron. Ghasts are more deadly and cunning than ghouls, with their paralytic touch affecting even elves. Ghasts often hunt in groups of their own kind or serve as leaders of groups of normal ghouls. Onglor and Inglor, dwarven nobles who perished in the Weeping War, were transformed into Ghasts after their deaths. They now wander the dwarven dungeons of Mithranor in a state of starved frenzy. Ghoulmaster was an undead necromancer who tormented Waterdeep in the mid-14th century. This intelligent ghoul worshipped Lolth, the Spider Queen. Lolth entrusted him with a peculiar artifact resembling a piece of a stone spider and tasked him with orchestrating attacks on the masked lords themselves. Ghoulmaster discovered an old shrine of Mirkul in the ancient crypt of the Castellanter family on the dungeon level of Undermountain. He corrupted the shrine, raised the dead from Waterdeep's noble houses, and sent them to attack the city's citizens. The stone spider artifact not only raises and controls the dead, but also binds their souls to their undead bodies, causing them immense suffering. A wight is an undead entity animated by sheer violence and hatred. They have the ability to drain life energy from their victims through touch, turning them into new wights upon death. They appear as distorted reflections of their former selves, existing in a state between life and death, akin to a corpse possessed by a spirit. Their mummified flesh covers a twisted skeleton, with hands ending in deadly claws and teeth that are sharp, jagged like needles. Wights communicate through wheezes, gasps, and moans. A wight's eyes are calcified and useless for vision. Any light that penetrates them causes pain. However, they can still perceive life energy. When attacking, their eyes glow like white-hot embers. They are evil undead beings brought back by their vanity, evil deeds, and desires. As they approach the end of their mortal lives, their dying spirits reached out to Orcus or another evil deity, receiving undeath in exchange for an eternity spent hating and trying to destroy all living things. In their undeath, they retain their personalities and memories. While they have free will, they are also bound to serve the evil powers that resurrected them and are driven by a dark craving for the life energy of victims, akin to an addiction. Wights are territorial creatures, rarely straying far from their burial sites or familiar locations from their past life unless commanded by their masters. Some exceptions exist, but typically their attachment to their tombs is thought to be a source of pride rather than sorrow. Another theory suggests they prefer catacombs for tactical advantages offered by winding corridors and shadows. Regardless, Wights quickly learn the layout of their catacombs in great detail. Due to their ability to perceive life energy, they can also detect the psychic value that living beings place on their equipment. This leads them to collect such items, seemingly attracted by the aesthetic value of these auras. However, they do not preserve the physical objects, so anything not durable or non-rusting tends to deteriorate, leaving them small troves of gold, silver, and gems. When touching a living being, they drain their life energy, even through flesh, clothing, and armor. They prefer to move stealthily or hide in the shadows, launching surprise attacks on unsuspecting victims. Sometimes they serve stronger undead creatures like wraiths and other malevolent beings. When following a leader, they often forego strategy, driven instead by their urge for death and destruction. A specific type of wight, known as a slaughter wight, can release a death wail when slain, inciting nearby undead creatures into a frenzied attack. Like other undead, wights are resistant to harmful necromantic energies and injuries from non-magical or non-silvered weapons. They are immune to poisons and unaffected by sleep, charm, hold, and other similar spells. Holy water is lethal to them, and the Raise Dead spell is said to instantly annihilate a wight. They are active during the night, retreating from the sunlight into crypts, tombs, or burial mounds where they dwell during the day. Unlike vampires, they simply dislike the sun, but are not harmed by it. Their lairs are characterized by an eerie silence, abandoned by birds and wild animals, with abundant dead plant life. Despite popular belief, they can emerge anywhere, not just in crypts and burial mounds. There are even rumors of aquatic wights reanimating among shipwrecks and possibly being related to Lacedons. They move silently and blend in well with the dreary walls of their tombs, allowing them to attack from hiding. Less experienced adventurers often panic, thinking these stealthy creatures are emerging from the walls. Like other undead, they do not require air, food, drink, or sleep. They exist simultaneously on the prime material and negative material planes, which grants them their life-draining abilities. Many animals sense the presence of wights. Dogs growl and howl, horses stop and refuse to move forward, and birds and insects fall silent. Even though wights crave the energy of living beings, they do not need it for sustenance. Some scholars speculate that this energy helps animate their undead bodies. Despite this, wights can remain in their undead state for centuries while trapped in tombs, staying completely motionless until a living being enters their lair. Humanoid victims of a wight's life-draining powers are reanimated as zombies, sometimes called half-wights, and are controlled by their killer. In certain instances, those killed by life-draining attacks come back as enslaved wights. If the master is slain, these wights regain their malicious free will. Reviving a wight is nearly impossible. There is no known spell to create a wight, and the legends about their origins are contradictory. By the mid to late 14th century, one of the foremost experts on wights in Faerûn is Gilda the Sage. However, her writings on the subject are often flawed due to her lack of adventuring experience and social biases as a daughter of royalty. Some of her incorrect claims include the idea that wights are exclusively noble-born individuals possessed by evil spirits, that they are prolific burrowers, and that they can only communicate by reaching out to their spirits at close range. She and other scholars of the time also claim it is unheard of for wights to use weapons instead of their own claws. The ancient barrow burial sites where the wights are often found are scattered across northwestern Faerûn, particularly the Moonshae Islands, the Dale Lands, and Rashomon. The Battle of Bones has also produced many wights and other undead over the years. In 1357, wights infested the burial glen of Mitranor, along with other undead creatures. By 1371, a group of 10 former Purple Dragon Knights who had turned into wights were on the high road in Cormyr, searching for the enemies of Cormyr. In their twisted undead state, they consider all living beings their enemies. Some sages theorize that when a wight drains their victim's life energy, it experiences a rush of mortality, a euphoric reminder of their mortal existence, driving them to extreme depravity. Others believe that the life energy allows wights to grow in strength and willpower, enabling them to control their urges. Wights that absorb enough life energy can command lesser wights and are called greater wights. A great wight is a particularly powerful wight that leads the lesser among them. These are more powerful, resilient, intelligent, and disciplined than their counterparts. Although some scholars claim they are larger, it is not always evident at first glance. However, their use of weapons and armor, as well as their speech and behavior, often give them away. Their bodies are typically more intact, increasing the likelihood of their strength to become great wights. They have better control over their dark urges and possess the intelligence to strategize, speak clearly, and utilize magical weapons and armor. They can experience and display emotions, such as an evil laugh at the expense of their victims. They generally remain dormant in their tombs until disturbed by intruders and are antagonistic toward other powerful wights. When they detect intruders in their barrows, great wights arm themselves with weapons and armor and lure enemies into traps, often using treasure as bait. They are rarely encountered alone, usually fighting with formidable retinues of wights and half-wights. Greater wights are more resistant to turn undead than average wights. They serve as leaders and strategists among lesser wights who defer to their authority and seek their aid when threatened. Scholars believe that normal wights cannot disobey the commands of a greater wight. Not every group of wights includes a great wight, and there is never more than one in such a group. Any wight can theoretically become a great wight by draining enough life force from its living victims. As a wight absorbs more life energy, they grow stronger and gain more control over their mental faculties. A wight that drains a large quantity of life energy within a month can become sufficiently energized to ascend to a leadership role. However, a true great wight often absorbs much more than this minimum threshold. Once they achieve this level of power, they typically go on a killing spree, eliminating all other nearby wights that have also absorbed significant amounts of life energy to remove any rivals. After this, they become a true great wight. Some of the best sources of primary information about great wights come from Trickon the Wanderer, who observed a great wight beating a rival into submission, and Bishop Shergonel of Waterdeep, who survived to recount a great wight's impressive resistance against his efforts to turn them. Vinjarek, better known as the Mound King, was an evil plague-changed great wight who ruled over the tombs of Dekon Thar. The Mound King was a mysterious figure known to wield terrible plague-changed powers. His posture was stooped, and he wore tattered chainmail and a gold and silver crown studded with gemstones. He wielded a mighty sentient frostbrand sword known as Deep Chill. His voice and laughter were raspy and hoarse. The Mound King was cold and vengeful, responding violently to any minion who challenged him and finding amusement in Cleric's futile attempts to turn him. While he delighted in draining the life from adventurers who opposed him, he rarely pursued invaders within his lair, preferring to use his treasures to lure them into traps. Although he preferred solitude, he did not shy away from leading and coordinating his followers. His many undead minions respected his leadership, especially in battle. He spent much of his time sitting immobile upon his throne, usually accompanied by no more than 3 white servants who acted as his messengers. However, his throne room became a hive of activity whenever his lair was under attack. Vindurek tolerated no competition for his position as Great White. His primary focus was ruling over the tombs of Dekon Thar, but by the 15th century, he began inciting monstrous activities beyond his lair and threatening the nearby settled lands. It is unclear whether Vindurek's relationship had been to the chieftains in gold, the bandit civilization that had interred its rulers in the 7 tombs of Dekon Thar, but it is apparent that he had not been originally buried in those tombs. He may have played a role in raising the other Wights from within. Before the time of troubles, he ascended to become a mighty Great White who ruled as the Mound King over the lesser Wights of the tombs of Dekon Thar. He earned a reputation for making the rich tombs too dangerous to plunder, and as of the Year of Wild Magic, 1372, none had managed to bypass him and his minions to loot its legendary treasures. During the events of the Spell Plague, the Mound King became plague-changed, gaining unknown but terrible powers. In the decades that followed, he tightened his control around the lair and caused an increase in monsters across the Nether Mountains. By the late 15th century, he'd become one of the premier threats to the people of Lurar, although the location of his lair remained a mystery. However, one of his barrows was raided by adventurers from Silvery Moon during this time, all of whom perished one by one on their journey home. Each body was discovered without its limbs, loot, or equipment, and the words, "Do not disturb the Mound King," carved into their flesh. Mummies are undead beings created from preserved mummified corpses, animated by the dark gods of the desert. Typically, they appear as humanoid figures, wrapped in aged and rotting linen strips. Various types of mummified creatures exist, ranging from massive to small. Many mummies emit distinct aromas from the ingredients used in their creation, such as cinnamon, ginger, saltpeter, roses, myrrh, frankincense, lye, wormwood, and pomegranate. Others have less pleasant scents, like earth, decay, and vegetable rot, while some rare ones may smell of bread, yeast, wine, vinegar, or even roasted meats. Mummies instill fear in the living upon sight and inflict a rotting curse called mummy rot on any creature they touch. If untreated, this curse can be fatal from within 1 to 6 months. Each month, the victim's skin deteriorates further and their natural healing slows significantly. The affliction can be alleviated by a cure disease or break enchantment spell, while cure wounds is ineffective. When a creature dies from mummy rot, the disease rapidly destroys the corpse within 12 seconds, leaving very little time for resurrection by magical means. A fully decayed corpse cannot be resurrected by the Raise Dead spell. Other diseases carried by various mummified creatures include Deadeye, Heart Sing, Deathbite, and Palsy. All mummies induce terror, causing even the bravest creatures to either flee or become paralyzed by overwhelming dread. These undead beings can only be harmed by magical or enchanted weapons, and even then, these tools are only partially effective. Like many other undead, mummies are immune to spells and effects such as sleep, charm, hold, poison, and paralysis, while cold has no effect on them. Fire, both magical and mundane, as well as holy water, pose significant threats to mummies. A cleric can return a mummy to life using the resurrection spell, depending on the priest's abilities and the mummy's age. Remove Curse has no effect on them. Mummies serve as undead guardians of tombs and vaults belonging to the honored dead, such as ancient kings or nobility. They patrol these places with unwavering vigilance, always on the lookout for tomb robbers or intruders. In their undead state, they harbor a deep hatred for all living things, attacking any creature that crosses their path. Endowed with significant physical strength, they utilize their natural weapons to clobber, pummel, claw, or bite their opponents. Some mummified creatures even retain fearsome abilities they possessed in life. Most mummies are not created by magical means, but are simply embalmed nobles, heroes, and other important individuals. In some instances, mummification and transformation into undead guardians are reserved for criminals or those who wronged powerful leaders or priests. These mummies often rise spontaneously from their tombs when their resting places are disturbed, animated by dark magics or the greed they possessed in life, unwilling to suffer grave robbers even in death. This greed can tap into the energies of the positive energy plane, transforming them into fearsome undead beings. Mummies exist simultaneously on both the prime material and positive energy planes due to their connection with it. Like other undead, mummies are unnatural beings that do not need to eat or drink and have no predators or natural enemies. They are most commonly found in dry desert regions on Toril. They are sealed inside ancient tombs, catacombs, burial chambers, and the cores of pyramids. These tombs often feature complex crypts filled with traps, numerous rooms, and the treasures, relics, and favorite items that the mummified individuals possessed in life, including pets, foods, and aromatic oils. Tombs of particularly evil creatures often include the mummy's slaves and family members who were killed and interred alongside their cruel masters. Around 1340, mummies were found in the swamps outside of the town of Flan in the Moonsea region. Shambling and decayed mummies were also encountered in Gauntlgrim around 1479. Wandering undead, including mummies, plagued red cliffs in the High Moor, with mummies created for bog burials encountered in the region's peat bogs. In Zahara, mummies can be found in the catacombs beneath the ruined city of Moradask, the City of Sun. In the Old Empires, mummies are common in Mulhorand due to their burial customs involving mummification. These wandering mummies can be encountered in Great Vale, in civilized areas at night, and in the wastes. Beyond the prime material plane, they can also be found in the domains of dread. The spell Mummy Creation animates a corpse into a mummy for a brief period. The Bane-eyed spell, Undeath After Death, allows worshippers of the deity to return to unlife as several types of undead, including mummies. A traditional mummy is created through a lengthy and meticulous mummification process. The corpse is first soaked in a preservative substance, such as a carbonate of soda, for several weeks. Next, the body is covered with aromatic substances like spices and raisins. The heart, brain, and liver are often removed, preserved in separate canopic jars, and stored near the mummified body within the tomb. The body is then thoroughly wrapped in linen cloth strips, sometimes with gemstones, affixed between the sheets. Some mummies, especially monstrous ones, have their linens dyed and soaked in additional preserving salves and herbal tinctures. When mummies are created to serve as eternal guards through necromantic magic, their wrappings are inscribed with magical symbols. The ritual culminates in a dark incantation that animates the mummy. The sentry mummy becomes active when specific conditions, such as trespassing in the tomb, theft, or offenses against the mummy's loved ones are met. Raised animal mummies often serve as undead minions to more powerful beings, including to other mummies or dangerous forms of intelligent undead, while monster mummies are typically created to act as eternal guardians. In Yuan Ti communities, Malison mummies are created to serve as protectors, often stationed within snake cities, hideouts, and temples dedicated to Zahir. Aspects of the kobold deity Kurtulmak are known to use mummies as guardians. The avatar of Jergal, the lord of the end of everything, appears as a desiccated and mummified creature from an ancient and unknown alien race. Mummy dust is a valued spell component used to create items enchanted with rot and disease, such as Breath of Life or Undead Summoning. Mummy bone is another material component used in certain spells, like Scare. A powdered pigment known as Mummy Brown from the Old Empires was originally made from crushed and milled mummy remains. Mulhorandi Mummy Tea is a foul-smelling potion brewed using mummy wrappings. These concoctions are used to alleviate various ailments, similar to the effects of cure blindness or deafness and cure disease spells. Dust of the mummy is a powdered poison and sometimes used in trap making. This poison is a byproduct of the embalming process, distilled from organs removed during mummification. When inhaled, dust of the mummy causes an infection of mummy rot disease. The effects of this poison can be countered with a dose of mummy rot antidote. Mummy wrappings are a rare and valued commodity, worth around 40 gold coins. There are several variants that differ from standard mummies in the Forgotten Realms. Salt mummies are a type of undead that emerge from the bodies of those who died with a great sin, causing a connection to the negative energy plane, and were also coincidentally buried near salt veins. Their bodies are so encrusted with minerals and dried out from the salt that their original race is typically unrecognizable. They are extraordinarily dry and have a unique ability to evaporate moisture from anything they touch, including plants and even water elementals. All forms of water harm salt mummies as if it were holy water. They are typically found alone, in pairs, or in groups of 5 to 9. They are known to haunt some of the larger salt caverns beneath Faerun. Notably, they can be found in the buried realms near the ruins of Teth Yamar, beneath the Rauran Desert, and the Darklands. Specifically, they are found in the area of the Darklands near the troglodyte warrens of Traskel Tharog, beneath Chesenta. A crawling apocalypse is an uncommon type of mummy. These creatures resemble a massive mummified mollusk, such as a giant octopus or squid, with barbs on their tendrils. They typically retain vague memories spanning millennia, particularly of their creators and their past lives, which drive their violent tendencies. Their appearance is so terrifying that it can temporarily paralyze some creatures with fear. They were created in ancient times through necromancy to serve as living weapons for desert-dwelling races. Some survived the fall of these civilizations, though encounters with them are extremely rare, as most remain trapped in vaults deep beneath the desert sands. As of the late 14th century, a crawling apocalypse was known to roam outside the ruins of Oreme in Anaruk. Mummy lords are undead beings that rise from the remains of a particularly powerful and evil individual. They often resemble other mummies, but retain the regalia and weaponry they had in their previous life. Many mummy lords are especially powerful spellcasters, often raised as guardians for the resting place of those they served in life. Their mere gaze can instill utter despair in the minds of their enemies. The desiccated heart of the mummy lord acts as its phylactery. If it remains intact, the mummy lord cannot be entirely destroyed and will reform in their lair within a day's time. To permanently destroy a mummy lord, its heart must be burned to ashes. They can speak words of blasphemy that paralyze their foes. They can also inhibit all healing around them by focusing pure negative energy. They are immune to disease and poison and highly resistant to all forms of other magic. However, they are especially vulnerable to fire and flame and can only be destroyed by such means. The rituals to create mummy lords are known to only the most powerful clerics. The heart and innards of the deceased are removed and placed in limestone or clay jars inscribed with religious symbols. The layers of mummy lords are twisted with dark powers. Food and drink brought within spoil or rot, and water evaporates immediately. Divination magic is less accurate within their layers, often leading to incorrect or deceptive results. Any being that steals items from their layers is cursed until the items are returned. They are often served by numerous lesser undead. Lord Hund Hillgauntlet, a noble of the Hillgauntlet family in Waterdeep, lived during the first half of the 14th century. By the Year of Shadows, he relocated to the arcane chambers level of Undermountain and transformed himself into a mummy. The grand-uncle of Lord Jocelyn Hillgauntlet, who led the family in the mid-14th century, he antagonized the Eltorchul family. Initially, he paid a large sum for information on a gateway into Undermountain, but later betrayed the young Eltorchul lord by transforming him into an undead minion. In his youth, he was a skilled fighter, and as he aged, he mastered the necromantic arts. His sinister eccentricity made his family uneasy, and they were quietly relieved when he vanished into Undermountain. He enjoyed combat, relishing challenges against adventurers who explored his tomb, often taunting and joking with his opponents. He also had a passion for acquiring new knowledge through books, frequently demanding or bargaining for them. As he grew older, he became obsessed with constructing a tomb for himself and his eventual undeath, complete with undead guardians. His attempts to build this elaborate mausoleum in the City of the Dead were repeatedly delayed or denied by the Lords of Waterdeep. Focused on necromancy, he aimed to secure a place for his afterlife. After being denied a spot in the City of the Dead, he learned about a two-way portal to the depths of Undermountain. Using this portal, he transported workers and hired mages to build the detailed tomb to his specifications. Once it was completed, he killed most of the workers and used their corpses to create numerous guardians, including the young Eltorchul lord who had revealed the portal's location. This enraged the young lord's brothers, who attempted to attack Hund in his tomb, but were driven back by its guardians. Instead, they ransacked his villa in the city, stealing anything of value, including his daughter. They also hired magical assistants to destroy the portal, ensuring Hund could never return to the surface. Before dying of natural causes, he brought in a specialist mage from Caleb Shan to perform an elaborate and costly ritual to transform him into a mummy. He then remained in his tomb, endlessly reading his books and waiting for adventurers to enter his lair, possibly to bring new reading material for him to study. Cessaphahon is an elf commander of Mithranor's defense forces who died of a mysterious disease before the Weeping War. This illness brought him back as a mummy, and he could still be found in his crypt as of 1369. In his prime, Cessaphahon was a striking elf with blonde hair, often seen wearing a decorative elven breastplate adorned with a wolf insignia. In death, he lies in his sarcophagus, covered with a delicate silk sheet. Beneath the covering, his dried skin is encrusted with growths and dried sores. During his life, he was a brave and honorable commander of Mithranor's military. However, after contracting the strange disease that led to his demise, his personality changed drastically, making him violent and unstable. Despite missing linen wrappings and not appearing like a typical mummy, he possesses all their usual abilities. He is entombed in his crypt in the Polyandrium of Mithranor. Like many other sites in the city's ruins, the crypt is protected from grave robbers by a rune and word of power. His tomb features a wolf rune and is unlocked by the word Haturan. Before his death, he demonstrated bravery and valor by leading the defense of Mithranor against numerous invasions, which ensured the city's safety and earned him many accolades as well as a loyal following. In the middle of his life, he contracted a mysterious, incurable disease that eventually drove him mad and violent. His deteriorating personality and constant violent episodes turned public opinion against him. The leaders and citizens of Mithranor confined the Mad Elf to his home, with only his most loyal followers remaining sympathetic. He lived in this disgraced and mad state for several years, until the disease finally claimed his life. He was buried as a hero inside his crypt, thanks to those who remained loyal to the brave commander. These loyalists locked the crypt with a rune and a word of power, and placed numerous traps inside to prevent any mobs from desecrating his final resting place. Unbeknownst to the elves of Mithranor, the disease gave Cessaphahon on life as a mummy. He remained in his tomb, guarding it against intruders. In 1369, his crypt was one of the few that remained undisturbed by the occupying forces of the Cult of the Dragon. The cult members, aware of the dangers inside, scribbled a warning message on the door in chalk to prevent anyone but Shamor from entering. He is buried with the jars of a fragrant, black, tar-like liquid that fills his crypt with the scent of flowers even hundreds of years after his death. In life, this liquid served as a healing ointment, one of the few things that could alleviate his suffering and calm his rage. Valan Sarnaster is a renowned and influential seer of Savras who resided for a period of time within the house of the all-seeing orb in Tashalar. She believes she is destined to ascend to divinity as the demigod of faith, replacing Savras in the Faerunian pantheon. She attained a unique form of undeath to achieve immortality. Although she is undead, Valan Sarnaster retains her living appearance through a diadem that alters her looks. She wears yellow robes and bears a tattoo of a third eye on her forehead. In her undead form, she lacks vital and non-vital organs, including her heart, pancreas, kidneys, nerve bundles, and eyes. These organs have been transplanted into her followers' bodies, turning them into canopic golems. Valan Sarnaster's mind is profoundly distorted by the visions she receives. She suffers from severe delusions of grandeur, believing herself on the brink of divinity. She thinks her insights into the future shield her from any surprises or twists of fate. She prefers solitude to avoid disturbances or external influences that might affect her divinations. Her personal sanctum is a former temple of Savras, existing within its own demiplane, accessible only through a single portal. As the creator and master of her canopic golem servants, Valan can see whatever is within their field of vision and speak through their mouths at will. She can also see through the depictions of Savras's eye that decorate the walls of her tomb as if she has true sight. If her physical form is destroyed, she reforms a day later within her sarcophagus at the heart of her tomb. The only way to prevent her restoration is to destroy her crystalline heart, placed in the chest of her most loyal devotee. Valan's most notable possession is the book, The Canopic Being. This tome outlines the rituals that set her on the path to undeath and perceived immortality. In addition to this ritual book, Valan possesses a sunblade about which she has received two visions, one foretelling it would be used to kill a powerful foe, and the other predicting it would be used to kill her. Among other treasures are numerous valuable gemstones, a blue rhomboid unestone, a staff of fate, and a watchful helm. She's a prolific oracle and a servant of Savras. Her work is well known within his church and beyond. She studies carefully each potential future she perceives that leads to failure, analyzes the circumstances, and eliminates any possibility of it occurring. While she lived alone for many years, she is served both in life and undeath by her loyal attendant, Alessia Basir. Alessia holds Valen in the highest regard and is unaware of her transformation into undeath. She cannot imagine that Savras' oracle could commit any malevolent deeds or acts of evil. At some point in her life, she received visions directing her to undergo the process of living mummification. She recovered the tomb known as the Canopic Being and used the rituals within to achieve immortality. Over the course of 3 months, during or before the year of 3 ships sailing, 1492, Valen drew several people from across the realms into her sanctum, seeking the wisdom of her visions. These individuals willingly offered their organs to Valen and accept hers in return, as part of a ritual that transforms them into servile automatons. Valen explained their disappearances to her still living followers through a web of lies and half-truths. A Death Knight is a formidable undead warrior created by gods of death or other sinister forces. Typically, they are formed from evil humanoids who are blackguards, fighters, rangers, barbarians, or fallen paladins in life. They retain a similar appearance to their living form, but have a decayed body with rotting flesh and glowing points of light instead of eyes. They often wear fine clothing and armor, especially capes, to signify their importance. A Death Knight instills fear in the hearts of weaker creatures. Often riding a nightmare into battle, they command various undead servants, such as skeletons, wights, and zombies. More powerful Death Knights have a greater number of servants. Nightmares, often referred to as hell horses or demon horses, are fiendish equines named for the terrifying dreams experienced by those who encounter them. These wicked creatures are primarily known for serving as mounts for various malevolent beings in the lower planes. They resemble emaciated stallions with night black coats. However, a closer look reveals their warhorse-like appearance is superficial. They have large heads, fangs like vipers, and dark, malevolent eyes, often illuminated by red-hot flames. Their nostrils flare with orange fire. Their manes and tails, wild and wreathed in fire, turn to cinders and quickly disperse upon death. Their steely hooves leave scorch marks wherever they go, creating mysterious patterns and gaps. They gallop through the night with unnatural agility, their black bodies blending into the darkness, leaving onlookers with the sight of racing, infernal flames that appear and disappear in smoke screens of brimstone. Rumors suggest that the creatures move so fast they appear as a blur. Those who have seen them speculate they can move between shadows or teleport, explaining their ability to start and stop instantly and suddenly appear without seeming to have moved. They are callous and cruel creatures that stalk those they victimize. They harbor a deep hatred for all life on the material plane and possess an infernal intelligence not seen in normal animals. Rather than simply killing their targets, they use their supernatural powers to instill terror, making their victims fear for their lives before killing them when they are reduced to panicked wrecks. One of their preferred tactics is to allow their victims a fleeting sense of safety before suddenly reappearing, crushing their last hope, and then delivering the killing blow. Though wild and roaming by nature, they are known to willingly serve as mounts during missions of malice, but only for those sufficiently wicked and capable. Those who wish to ride them should remember that nightmares are not mere steeds, but fiercely independent and untamable fiends with their own instincts and agendas. Prideful and egotistical, they often act on their own will, even if it contradicts the goals of their supposed masters, sometimes even to their detriment. Even if both parties wish to commit evil deeds, their methods may be incompatible, and attempts to force nightmares into servitude often end poorly. Only after forming a bond over time will a nightmare become loyal to a rider, and only then will they become true partners in villainy. The primary power of nightmares is their ability to appear in dreams, either as an ill omen before a victim encounters them, or in the minds of survivors after a terrifying attack. They can shift into the astral and ethereal planes, as well as the Shadowfell at will. Despite lacking wings, they can magically fly, even faster than they run. Their hooves often ignite flammable objects, and they can leave massive walls of fire in their wake. They are typically surrounded by a thick haze of smoke that prevents others from seeing them clearly, although they can see through it perfectly. During combat, they often exhale a searing, sulfurous smoke, neighing in fits of rage while snorting out this noxious gas. This blinding, choking cloud leaves enemies wheezing and unable to fight back effectively. They can inflict deaths so gruesome that they create enraged and vengeful phantoms. With tooth and hoof, nightmares attack most creatures they encounter. Beings from the lower planes are usually spared from their fury, but others, especially those from the material, are not so fortunate. They use hit-and-run tactics, targeting isolated members of groups and blocking escape routes with fires, speed, and their ability to move between planes. Only skilled riders can effectively fight while riding them. Nightmares of the Shadowfell are unique in their tendency to hunt in small, predatory herds, similar to wolf packs. They haunt untraveled roads in both the Shadowfell and the Prime Material, preying on the rare night wanderers. Paths known as Ember Ways, named for the smoking hoof prints left behind, are considered dangerous even by the inhabitants of the Shadowfell. The gloomy realms of the Grey Wastes and the bleak Shadowfell are closely associated with nightmares, but they can be found in other planes as well. For example, the Abyss has mutated its nightmares into demonic variants. These nightmares usually wander alone, killing individuals in small groups, but those in herds have tighter bonds and unique social structures. A nightmare known as Sin's Reward, barded in spiked black armor and cloaked in black smoke and white flames, is the leader of all nightmares in the 9 hells. The nightmares of the Abyss are commanded by Thunder of Hooves, a massive 6-legged nightmare that rules through violence and intimidation. Despite their mutual hatred, the two mate annually in the Shadowfell, producing 3 powerful foals. One goes to the Abyss, one to the Hells, and one remains in the Shadowfell. On rare occasions, between 1 and 10 years apart, a sinister ritual known as the Gloom Meet occurs, bringing together many different beings of evil. The denizens of the lower planes and Shadowfell gather in the glooms of Hades for dark diplomacy, settling differences, forming new alliances, and discussing future plans. 2 weeks before the Gloom Meet, nightmares signal this approach, racing across the plains and becoming more noticeable, especially in the Grey Wastes. In the final moments before the meet, nightmares charge in a terrifying stampede toward their destination, leaving a trail of hoof-print-shaped scorch marks. Some planar scholars and adventurers have followed these trails, leading to infrequent accounts of the Gloom Meet. Nightmares are favored mounts among many malevolent races, leading to the creation of the Order of the Nightmare, a company named after their steeds. Night hags often ride them, but powerful, intelligent demons and devils, particularly Hell Knights, value them as trusted companions. Certain undead, like Death Knights, Liches, vampires, and even specters, also take nightmares as mounts. Mortal spellcasters, wicked warriors, and anti-paladins seek out nightmares for power and prestige, and the Shadarkai prize them as chosen mounts. Their burning manes do not harm their riders, as they grant fire resistance to those atop them. Taming a nightmare typically requires complete domination, with the creature and its potential rider dueling to determine its fate. Only when it becomes clear that death is the only alternative will nightmares submit, but they retain their individuality and will not blindly follow commands. Mortals wishing to bind a nightmare into service can use a combination of the Summon Monster and Wall of Fog spells to bring them to the material plane. The nightmare must be fed an offering of 20 pieces worth of platinum, ground into oat-like flakes. Whoever feeds them becomes their master for 3 days. Beings of the lower planes have their own unknown methods for binding nightmares. Infernal Tack, typically used by Narzagons, allows the wearer of the magical spurs to call the nightmare from across the plains. Nightmares have no real connection to actual horses and are semi-material beings that do not need to breathe, though they can become tired. They can easily carry massive loads, and as long as there is space on their backs, they can transport any amount of undead. Despite being incapable of speech, nightmares can communicate with each other through some form of non-verbal communication. They do not require food, although they typically consume their slaughtered enemies. They prefer the meat of humans, demi-humans, and lesser fiends, with manes and lemurs being particular favorites. Specific tastes can vary widely between individuals. If not provided with such delicacies at least once a month, they may exhibit mild hostile behavior. If nightmares require nourishment, a point difficult to prove due to their ability to digest inorganic matter, they likely derive sustenance simply by committing evil acts. They can be found across the evil-aligned plains, from Acheron to Pandemonium. They race through the acidic jungles of Cathris and the blasting deserts of Menethys and Carceri, as well as the fire and magma flows in Gehenna. Lesser nightmares, believed to be bred from their stronger kin, are equally despicable, but more cautious. While they cannot transition between planes at will, they can still move between them with passengers and have an impeccable sense of direction. They immediately try to escape if good creatures attempt to ride them, but are excellent partners for blackguards. Couchamars are a particularly powerful and vile breed of nightmare that strike fear in even the bravest champions. Their smoke is even more overpowering, and they carry over twice as much as regular nightmares. Whether they can naturally reproduce is a matter of debate, but there is a method for creating them. A ritual of dark magic can transform a Pegasus into a nightmare, by agonizingly removing its wings, causing it to lose its noble qualities and gain despicable traits. Aging nightmares show signs of gray hairs on their black coats or a hunched posture. As their time of death approaches, they journey to the third layer of Hades, Pluton, to a place called the Hill of Bone to die, often bringing ruin to their former masters in the process. The Hill of Bone is a massive graveyard, a mountainous heap of bones shaped like a giant equine skeleton when viewed from above. It is filled with an eerie silence, broken only by occasional whinnies and chuffs, even when no nightmares are present. The constant background noise of barely audible bone rattling can sometimes make the area forming the legs or the head shift as if in victory. Elderly nightmares, peering from walls of mist, occasionally canter onto the Hill of Bone, saluting it with their heads held high. The hill responds with an ear-splitting neigh that resounds up to a mile away and can drive listeners mad. When the echoes fade, the nightmare immediately falls over dead, and its skin rots off very quickly. The mysterious events on the Hill of Bone conceal its true purpose as the place where nightmares achieve immortality alongside their ancient ancestors. Removing even a scrap of bone from the hill is seen as a grave violation by the entire nightmare race, prompting all nightmares to hunt down the offender to return what was stolen, as well as exact retribution on behalf of their forebears. The feeling of being watched on the hill comes from the skulls, all of which possess true sight and can still communicate. The theft is reported to the next nightmare that comes to die, quickly spreading the information. If the nightmares fail to retrieve their remains, usually stopping after 3 or more of their kind die in the pursuit, the nightmare whose bones were stolen is doomed to permanently die, with its life force spreading throughout Hades. Dying on the hill is paramount for nightmares, and some prearrange for their bodies to be moved there even if they die on other planes. The Devil Duke Alosis claimed to have created the original nightmares, along with numerous other bestial monsters and curses. However, few scholars, whether wizardly or religious, outside of his own followers, believe these assertions. Lord Vonrak Moonstar's journey began as a minor noble in House Moonstar of Waterdeep, where he became a renowned explorer. His fate took a dark turn when he was corrupted by Shar, transforming him into a Death Knight. Following his transformation, Vonrak led the Dark Army of the Night, a significant cult devoted to Shar, operating from Vonrak Doom within the extensive Undermountain complex beneath Waterdeep. As a Death Knight, Vonrak dedicated himself to spreading Shar's influence and frequently clashed with the followers of Selûne in Waterdeep. His most notable achievement occurred in the year of the Tomb, 1182, when his forces successfully infiltrated and burned down the House of the High Stars, killing the protectors of the Moon Maiden. Vonrak formed a bond with Glister, a former bronze dragon turned shadow dragon by the priests, which had renamed himself Umbrak Sakar. Glister became Vonrak's loyal companion, guide, and mount. Olanthius was a commander of the Hell Riders during the mid-14th century, later becoming the undead general serving the archdevil Zariel in Avernus. Both in life and as an undead king, Olanthius was known for his deep thoughtfulness and compassion. Throughout his existence, he maintained a series of journals documenting his thoughts, feelings, and the inner conflict he experienced as a creature of undeath. After descending into the Hells, Olanthius developed a profound hatred for Zariel. He also felt significant regret, blaming himself for not recognizing Zariel's relentless zeal for slaying the demonic hordes of the Abyss sooner. He differed greatly from his fellow Hellrider Haruman, whom he considered lacking in understanding and compassion. However, he held deep respect for the General Yael. In the year of the Bow, 1354, the angel Zariel led the Hellriders from El Turul to Avernus in a daring extraplanar military campaign known as the Ride. While some soldiers fought valiantly against the devils, others retreated back to Toril, leaving Zariel with insufficient forces to maintain their position. Olanthius and his fellow commander stayed by Zariel's side, remaining loyal until they were captured and taken to Nessus. There, Zariel was forced to pledge allegiance to Asmodeus. Heartbroken by the angels' betrayal of their shared ideals, Olanthius ended his own life. However, his death brought no peace. Zariel resurrected him as a Death Knight, condemning him to serve as her lieutenant for eternity. By the year of the three-ship sailing, 1492, Olanthius resided within the crypt of the Hell Riders. While bound to protect the crypt, he had the ability to travel anywhere within Avernus. Militates was a renowned Death Knight who lived in ancient times. He faced punishment from his deity Tyr, resulting in an undead existence. He was a tall man, In his undead form, he wore brilliant heavy plate mail, the color of quicksilver, designed in a distinctly ancient style. He also wore a closed helmet that concealed his skeletal form, empty eye sockets, and withered skin. His presence exuded unsettling cold chill and had a dusty aroma reminiscent of a cemetery. Devoted to his beliefs and morals, he was stoic with a sharp battle sense, intelligence, and discipline. Though he spoke rarely, he welcomed conversation when it was offered. He adhered to etiquette and chivalry, always courteous in his interactions. Miltiades was always willing to be the first to face danger, prioritizing the defeat of evil and the protection of his allies. As both a Death Knight and a regular paladin, Miltiades possessed the ability to see the auras of creatures, revealing their true nature. This ability wasn't dependent on sight. Even in complete magical darkness, he could perceive these auras. According to Elminster Almar, the paladin could deflect magic with the same skill a trained fighter uses to deflect blows. Miltiades was also immune to death magic and could not be controlled through necromancy. His enchanted equipment included the Holy Shield of Tyr, adorned with the deity's holy symbol. The shield emits a commanding blue radiance, while the god's symbol glows with gold. His magical war helm hummed with protective enchantments. He also wielded an enormous runic sword of Tyr, covered end to end with magical runes and glyphs. Despite its size, he could wield this two-handed blade with ease, using just one hand. Each strike from the sword produced a shower of blue sparks. During his journey to the utter east, Miltiades was also armed with a massive and deadly warhammer. He owned a figurine of wondrous power dating back to his mortal days. This item, an ivory-carved steed, could transform into a noble snow-white creature named Eratosthenes with a mere command word. Eratosthenes, being an inanimate creature, did not need to breathe, enabling its rider to travel underwater as if on dry land. He grew up in the city of Tyrell on the Moonsea North, where he was among the first to worship and follow Tyr's calling. He was revered as Tyrell's steward and champion. Due to his dedicated service to the Church of Tyr, he was granted the Holy Shield, a magical warhelm, and his runic sword. For 50 years, he faithfully protected the city until the warrior wizard Zarl attacked. Tyrell was besieged for a year, during which Miltiades personally slew many of Zarl's greatest warriors. However, Zarl never directly challenged Miltiades, opting instead to deplete Tyrell's resources gradually. In desperation, as the city faced imminent ruin, Miltiades snuck into Zarl's camp under the cover of night and assassinated him, an act deemed dishonorable by the maimed god. Miltiades did not survive the encounter, as he was overrun and killed by Zarl's troops. This led to the remaining forces invading Tyrell, ransacking and destroying the city, which was now defenseless without its protector. Tyr Grimjaws refused to let Miltiades die, and instead bound his spirit to his slain body, transforming the disgraced paladin into a Death Knight as punishment. His body was buried in a cemetery several miles south of the destroyed city, surrounded by the most powerful and loyal servants of the warlord. Although Zarl's body was returned to its homeland, the warrior's spirit lingered by Miltiades' own body. 1,000 years later, in the year of the Morning Star, 1350, the city of Flann, along with several other cities on the Moonsea, disappeared, taken by the minions of Bane, Lord of Darkness. While the cities were removed from the primaterial plane, Flann was captured by the Red Wizard Marcus of Thay and the Pit Fiend Tanatal and placed into a massive cavern beneath his tower. Flann became besieged by Tanatal's demonic creatures, corrupted servants of the god of Rot, Moander, and other dire beings. Miltiades was summoned by Tyr and tasked with recovering the city. Despite his undead state, Miltiades did continue to serve his god. He found himself surrounded by the undead, risen from their graves by the dark magics of Bane. The heavily armored knight engaged the undead in battle and was soon joined by the heroes of Flann, Reno the Blade, Evane, her powerful feline familiar, Gamaliel, and the druid cousins, Androlosan and Telethia. During the battle, Miltiades confronted the ghost of Zarl, the battle mage he had killed long ago, who now commanded an army of undead. The heroes united in their efforts to defeat Zarl once again, but in the process, the Holy Shield of Tyr was destroyed. Miltiades and his companions successfully returned Flann to its rightful place on the northern shores of the Moonsea. Along their journey, he defended his allies against two werewolves disguised as innocent travelers and their pack of wolf-wares. One of the lycanthropes, Artur, was killed by the Death Knight. It was revealed that these creatures were servants of their target, Lord Marcus, the Red Wizard of Thay. During their travels, Miltiades and the Mage Evane bonded over their prolonged lives, developing mutual respect and eventually romantic feelings. For a brief period, he and his allies struck a bargain with a cunning succubus named Lunla, who desired to see her enemy Tanatel fail. She provided valuable information about the Red Wizard's weaknesses. Before entering a peaceful slumber, Militates shared a prophecy from Tyr that Kern the Hammer Seeker would retrieve the Hammer of Tyr, bringing prosperity to Flann after a period of strife and darkness. Though still an undead knight, Militates was content with fulfilling his deity's decree. 2 decades later, in the year of wild magic, 1372, a new threat emerged in the city. Shal used powerful divination magics to uncover the villain's identity, but suffered near death in arcane feedback. Contemplating the prophecy, Kern Desena ventured into Valhingen graveyard to meditate on the shrine dedicated to Militates. It was then that Tyr raised Militates once again to help Shal and Tarl Desena's son find the Hammer of Tyr, an artifact claimed by Bane a decade earlier. If successful, Militates was promised eternal rest and a well-deserved afterlife. Militates guided young Kern and led him to assemble the new heroes of Flann, including the living spell in the form of an elf. During his quest, Militates reunited with Yvain, rekindling their affections. As time went on, one of his companions, Serana's behavior began to unsettle Militates, particularly because she did not radiate an aura visible to paladins and the Death Knight of Tyr. Instead, she radiated nothing. Militates' suspicions were confirmed when Serana revealed her true fiendish nature and used the pool of twilight to enhance her hellish magics. She aimed to claim the powerful Hammer of Tyr and needed Kern to retrieve it. Recognizing Militates as a significant obstacle, Serana tasked her Hamatula servant, Hoag, with the Death Knight's destruction. Eventually, Serana's true nature was revealed, and in a fierce battle, she was defeated and sank into a pool of pure magic, which was destroyed by Yvain. At the conclusion of their successful journey, a fellow paladin of Tyr named Trooper, whom the group had met along the way, willingly gave his soul to Tyr, which restored Militates to life. Soon after, Militates and Yvain consummated their long-held affections and were wed. Lesser undead beings have proven throughout the many planes of the Forgotten Realms to be useful servants for masters who need an eternity of labor that never tires, ages, or requires sustenance. Whether the echo of a soul long departed inhabiting a decrepit mortal coil, or a being whose soul is trapped magically on the material plane through other means, these unfortunate creatures usually harbor a deep hatred for the living due to their own immense suffering. For the higher forms of undead that exist, and any aspiring necromancers with enough power and resources to do so, these creatures form the bulk of their undead servants, retinues, and armies. In wielding these lesser beings as tools, they typically harbor intense ambitions of interplanar power and influence. Some have even achieved the status of godhood. Such acts require atrocities on a scale most mortals cannot comprehend. However, they are assured in their knowledge that these faithful undead servants are bound to obey them for eternity.